Hello, everybody. Just to let you know that we're starting at 5 past, as per the slide, 11:05. So just a minute to go. People saying they've got sound issues. There's no sound issues. We just haven't started, and we start at 5 past just to allow for those connectivity issues and also late arrivals as well and sound issues. So I hope that helps out with the comments that are coming through. I just wanted to make sure that everybody's aware that we start at 5 past, which I think we're round about there now, aren't we? So I can go on camera. Hello, everybody. Let me just have a look at some of the questions. Just 1 second. Right, brilliant. Just 1 sec. I feel like I'm just about to have a runny nose as well. Well, good morning, everyone, and what a different day to have this webinar. I hope you're okay. I hope everything's fine. And this is quite a bit of a touchy subject, isn't it? It's a very sensitive subject to talk about. Thank you very much for joining us at the CIPD HR Inform today. My name's Amanda Chadwick. As you know, I'm a speaker, writer, presenter, expert in HR, employment law, health and safety and wellbeing. And today's topic has been brought on by the new Labour changes and new changes to sexual harassment you need to be aware of as a business. If you watched my reel on LinkedIn yesterday, you'd have heard me say, hi Amanda. I didn't say that on my reel, but hi Amanda. Lou's just saying she had the headphones, or actually, if it's a woman, I hope I don't know if it's a man or a woman, but Lou, I think it is a woman, said she had headphones on. Some people say it's not working. Right, okay. Saying that I just came on and made a jump, so I love scaring people, so that's good. Right, what's happening here? Some people saying they've got a problem with the issues. Just bear with me while I just type in. If anyone, right, is having sound issues like an echo, it could be, let me type this as I'm talking, it could be that you have two applications open, okay, or try logging back in. Right, and loads of people say it's all good there. Okay, gosh, isn't it relevant that we're talking about sexual harassment today at the CIPD HR Inform? And you know what have we had in the press? I wrote a couple of things. Justin Bieber. I don't know if you've ever you've seen just recently the video since Puff Daddy or Sean Combs has been arrested, but I'm not sure if you've seen that. Lots of people saying they're fine, so that's great. But I don't know if you've seen some of the videos and the way he was treated as a young boy doing his job that he loved, and the comments and things that happened to him. And I just want everybody to be aware, because when we talk about sexual harassment, we think automatically, I think, of a male sexually harassing a female, and that's very, very common. But there are exceptional cases where we get it where men are harassed, and actually it makes you cringe if you see some of these videos that are going around. It's absolutely disgusting as a young boy, young teenager, that he was exposed to that. On the back of that, actually, I was asking loads of people about sexual harassment, and people I know, people at work, where they've worked before, and I think nearly everybody said they'd had some sort of interaction that they felt uncomfortable with. And there was one gentleman that said when he first started work, and I've heard this before actually, where his boss, who was a female, used to lean against him with her bosom, if you don't mind me saying bosom on a webinar, and press them against her. She did it a lot, and he said I felt like she knew that she was doing it as well, and it made me really uncomfortable. So we're going to talk about this today. We're going to talk about this and the changes and what you need to be aware of as a business. And I've never been so busy, actually, people contacting me about training for this, because it is something that we need to address. I don't want to go into work and get sexually harassed, and I'm sure you don't either. I don't, and I think they're linked. You know, sexual harassment and bullying. I think if you don't respond in the way the person wants to sexual harassment, you get bullied, and it can lead to bullying as well as a reaction to that. And the other thing about this, and I know many of you listening today have been sexually harassed, you have been bullied, I have, and I've spoken about this quite openly, but the fact is that you feel guilty. You feel like, did I do something to encourage that? Did I say the wrong thing in some situations? Was it me that caused it? Do I do something wrong? Some people feel like that. So we need to delve deeper into this. We need to do something about it in the workplace. We're really going to help you today with this one. We're going to talk about those changes to sexual harassment you need to be aware of as a business. And while we're doing that, I'm just going to carry on for a second. I'm going to do my first poll. I can still see people logging on. I'm going to ask you, which industry do you work in, or what industry do you work in? I always ask that at the beginning of a webinar. And while we're looking at that and waiting for that poll to be answered, I just want to remind you that in October, for the whole of October, on the 18th of October, it's Menopause Awareness Day. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to do little reels on I'm not very good and professional at them, but I'm going to do little reels on my LinkedIn profile, just so you can have a look at them, to remind you we need to be aware of this as well. November is men's health, so I'll be talking about things to do with men and men's health. Get your male employees, get male HR listening, and all sexes that are affected by this, by the way, because you can transition to a man but still experience the menopause. So we'll talk about that as well. That's for October. Just keep your eyes peeled for that. And I'm just waiting for the poll to be finished. People still logging on now. And yes, this session is recorded, everybody. I always think it's nice to listen to it live, really. I think that's the best one. And if you're not on the list, don't worry, just type it in the box so we know. But I'm going to close that now. I'm going to get started on this presentation. I've been very, very excited about doing this presentation. I feel like we've come a long way since I started work in the early 80s. And I remember actually working on a market stall, not that I forget things, on a market stall when I was like in my teens, early teens, 13 actually. And one of the men that worked on the stall opposite, I worked on a handbag stall. There lies my addiction to handbags. And opposite me was a shoe stall. There lies my addiction to shoes. And I did that for a bit of pocket money. And this man must have been in his 40s. And he used to say to me and my friend, if you've got the time, I've got the inclination. Seriously, you know, as a young person, think about that. Think about how times have changed. Right, let's carry on with this webinar. If you want to share your stories with me, please put it in the box. I won't say your name. Today it's anonymous. I'll share the story with you. But remind you, the detail contained within this webinar is based on GB and Northern Ireland employment legislation. If you're in the jurisdictions of the Republic of Ireland, Jersey, Guernsey, or the Isle of Man, obviously it's very generic, this webinar today. It's sexual harassment we're talking about at the end of the day. Shouldn't happen to anybody. We're going to talk about this. And don't forget, Christmas is coming up. There's been many, many cases that have started at a Christmas party. People have a few drinks and tell people how they feel, grab them, grope them. And in one case, actually, a lady was, I'm sorry to say things like this to you, but it's the truth. It's something that happens in the workplace. She was sexually raped. We've had cases where somebody has gone to a works a party and had a date rape drug put in a drink. And it was only when HR contacted her to say they had a video flying around of her that there was a case there. Don't forget, there's a line here. We're talking about criminal investigation. We're talking about sexual harassment, sexual assault. This does happen in the workplace. So, right, on a lighter note, what is HR Inform? One-stop shop for employment law information and guidance. It's serving thousands of clients in different industries. We are up to date. We are relevant. We are trusted. You can use every single policy if you're running your own consultancy. If you're running a business and you're starting out, we're there to help you. If you're just stepping out into HR, we're there to help you as well. And in a lot of the cases with sexual harassment, by the way, many people didn't feel like they could complain about it. The recent ones we're talking about at the moment are Mohammed Al Fayed at Harrods. People said they didn't feel comfortable going to HR, the HR department. I can't answer for the HR department, but they said they didn't feel comfortable going to HR. And this is something that's coming out of a lot of the complaints that people are saying. They didn't feel they'd be heard. They didn't feel they'd be listened to. So today, what I am going to cover is what is sexual harassment. You're changing obligations, new powers for employees, risks and reasonable steps, government plans for further reform, and how we can help you with this. And don't forget, the most meaty part of this, I think, is that we have training for this on our platform, so you can utilize that as well. I just think this has to be spoken about. There's so much coming out now in the press of companies, of historic claims, how people are groomed, and it isn't just male, female, it's all sexes we're seeing it in. So we need to sit up, we need to do something about it in HR. We need to be the person that they go to and that they can let them know that something is going on and we take them seriously. So let's start this webinar then. Right, okay, so what is sexual harassment? Let's go to the next slide and let's have a look at that. And if you have you been affected by sexual harassment, you've been affected by anything like that, you can reach out to us. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn or Instagram. I do respond. It might take me a while, but I do respond. Sometimes I respond immediately, but I will respond if you want to chat about it. Let's have a look at this and let's have an overview. There is no cap on sexual harassment, a compensation awarded by an employment tribunal. This is why it's so costly to a business. And if you're listening as an employer, the employer has vicarious liability for the actions of their staff. They're responsible for the payout. And don't forget, with unfair dismissal, there's additional awards. It's, it's capped, but with sexual harassment, it isn't. And by the way, it can affect your mental health as well. It can affect you if it has happened to you. 3 in 5 women say they've experienced sexual harassment, bullying, or verbal abuse at work, rising to almost 2 in 3 women aged 25 to 34. 1 in 3 women report not telling their employer about what was happening, and employers will be under a new proactive and preventative duty from the 26th of October 2024. We have to take this seriously. We have to do something about it, put a stop to it in the workplace. Sexual harassment awards are uncapped. That means they can amount to hundreds and thousands of pounds. The polling was carried out, by the way, because I know you always ask me who did the poll. It's for the Trades Union Congress by Opinion. They surveyed 1,010, I don't know where they got the 10 from, but 1,010 working women in the UK aged over 18 between 20 to 26th of April in 2023. So a relatively new poll that they did and found this statistics out. And like I said, just walking around the office the other day and asking people, people saying that they were in retail and they were groped in retail, in a pub they were groped. And one of the things that happened to me many years ago, actually, I speak about working with casinos many years ago, a very glamorous job at the time. And I say that it was glamorous. You used to wear an evening dress, and you had loads of Demonte in the middle, long evening dress. We're talking about the Joan Collins era here. That's what we're talking about. And actually walking across, it's called the pit. When you come from the casino tables over to, where your rest area is, you come from the pit. And the amount of times, actually, I walked through once, and this old man actually groped me. And those days, like, people didn't say anything. And now he would be arrested for what he did. But luckily, you know what? I'm quite handy, and I will admit to you, he groped me very intimately, and I punched him. And guess who got told off? Me. And there was security and everything. They came diving over. But the fact is, it can affect people. I'm not saying that it should happen to me. I am tough, and I mean that I am tough, but there are people out there, so I'm resilient. I got my point over. I made my point. I complained to management, and from then security was much more secure around the people working in the pit. But there are people out there that happens to them. They wouldn't turn around and hit that person. And please accept that I don't accept violence, but I don't like being sexually assaulted either. But the fact was that there were people there that probably wouldn't have done that wouldn't have complained to management, that wouldn't have asked for more security around them, that they would have, just put up with that and gone home and been extremely upset about it and maybe resigned from their job. And this is why we have to talk about it, because we in HR are the people that can do something and action it. And when 1 in 3 women report not telling their employer about what was happening, we know they're going home, and we know they're really thinking about it. So let's have a look at what we should be doing. So defining sexual harassment, let's look at the Equality Act 2010. And this is when a person is subjected to unwanted conduct of a sexual nature, which has the purpose or effect of either violating their dignity or creating an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating, or offensive environment. when a person is treated less favourably because they're submitted to or rejected that unwanted conduct. And that can then lead to that bullying that I'm talking about. It includes worker on worker harassment. It includes things like harassment by third parties and harassment by agents acting on behalf of the employer. And I know there are so many examples out there where people have had that from third parties and degraded, or if you don't respond to people saying I quite fancy you, or would you like me to drive you home, or shall we get a meal after work, or let's have a drink, or a Christmas party, and you reject that, they feel themselves rejected and then try and humiliate you and create this offensive environment that we talk about under section 26 brackets 2 of the 2010 Act. This is when a person is subjected to unwanted conduct of a sexual nature which has the purpose or effect of either violating their dignity or creating an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating, or offensive environment. It also happens if they're treated less favourably because they're submitted to or rejected that unwanted conduct. And behaviour does not need to be sexually motivated. It includes worker on worker harassment by third parties, and harassment by agents acting on behalf of the employer. And what can happen if things aren't nipped in the bud, like a banter or jokes, then people join in that, and then that creates this really hostile working environment for somebody to be in, and the jokes on their behalf as well. So let's have a look at examples of sexual harassment. And if I was here 20, 30, 40 years ago, 40 years ago, would I be? Yeah, 40, 30, say 30, 40 years ago, sat here chatting to you. It wouldn't be on the internet, would it? It'd be on phone, or it would be in real life, but chatting to you about sexual harassment. I would not be talking about social media. I would not be talking about Facebook. I would not be talking about WhatsApp groups. I would be talking about calendars at work. I'd be talking about cups with women with breasts exposed. I'd be talking about page 3 women, and I would be talking about all that type of stuff in the workplace. A pornographic image is altered. This is an example of some of examples of sexual harassment. I've just spoken about one in an environment where the lady knew something had happened at a works event. She'd worked with this colleague for a while, actually. This is a very, very sad one. She worked with this colleague for a while, not face to face, but met, over the phone, chatted to that person, got on with them, and there was a group of them. So when they went to a work event, she didn't think twice about, because she felt comfortable with that person, to go back to their room to pick something up. And it was at that time that a drink was given to that person and something was added to it. And it was only the next day when she thought, I feel a bit different, and thought, just thought, what's gone on? Went home and had this feeling, this impending feeling of doom. And then HR actually contacted her from a different site and said, look, we've seen this video that's flying around that somebody's shown, and it features you in it, and it was because this person had shared that video with another colleague that it was exposed that it was and wasn't very comfortable with the video at all, reported them to HR, that it was uncovered, actually. So we need to rethink about, well, not only rethink about not having Christmas parties, but have rules in place for Christmas parties and get-togethers. We need to think about social media policies. We need to think about internet policies, WhatsApp group. But in particular examples of sexual harassment and new ones we're seeing, a pornographic image is altered. I've spoken quite widely about AI, but is altered by adding a colleague's face to it and sharing it in the workplace. I think it's funny. A female worker has a brief sexual relationship with her supervisor, then breaks it off. Now, I've seen so many of these. The supervisor then grabs the worker's bottom, saying, come on, stop playing hard to get. And after that, the supervisor starts to make things more difficult for the worker. I've heard and seen and mediated on so many of those. I've made notes today, and I thought I'd mention the dentist one. A dentist is having a relationship with a worker. They're in a long long relationship. He buys her a BMW, he buys her lots of nice things. The relationship ends, and she's still working in that particular dental practice because he's her boss, and he sexually harasses her to the point of extreme behaviour. But these are taken just from the EHRC guidance. A male worker alters a pornographic image by pasting an image of his female colleague's face onto it. He then sends it to other colleagues, causing them to ridicule her. There was no sexual motivation behind this act, but the use of the image is sexual in nature. And we're touching on criminal law here. A female worker has a brief sexual relationship with a supervisor. The worker tells the supervisor she thinks it's a mistake and does not want the relationship to continue. The next day, the supervisor grabs the worker's bottom, saying, "Come on, stop playing hard to get." And after that, the supervisor starts to make things more difficult for the worker, giving her more work to do than others and being more critical of her work. The rejection part of it's coming in, and then it's the bullying. The supervisor is treating the worker less favorably because she rejected his unwanted conduct. So those are some examples of that. Now, how your obligations are changing, let's have a look at this. So now employers have vicarious liability for the actions of their employees unless they take reasonable steps to prevent that harassment. You need to show that you have taken those reasonable steps when you are defending a claim at tribunal. Though today employers are expected to create those clear and concise anti-harassment policies and procedures. The policy should include the reporting process an employee should follow if they've experienced sexual harassment, as well as potential consequences for the guilty party and how to prevent it from happening. But even now, having a policy is not enough if it's not communicated to staff. So from the 26th of October, what we've got, employees can complain to the equality authorities that you are not taking reasonable steps to prevent sexual harassment, even when no allegations have been made. You must take proactive preventative action in respect of your workers and third parties, and compensation at employment tribunal can be increased by up to 25%. So we're now looking at, remember I always talk about policies and procedures and training, and I talk about it from the HR and the health and safety perspective. And I say that you can say you've trained somebody, but where's the evidence? And this is, if you adopt that rule that they have in health and safety, then you won't go far wrong. If I can't see the training, there's no evidence of it, they haven't been trained. If there isn't a policy, there isn't one. If you can't find it, you can't find the trained documentation, they've never been trained, there's no defense. So I always talk about this induction at the very, very beginning. You have not one clue who you are taking on when you first employ somebody. You have this induction. You think they're brilliant because of the interview. They start with you. You don't know anything about their family history. You don't know their family life. You don't know the health conditions. You don't know anything about that person at all. And you certainly don't know if they're a product of the environment they're brought up in, or the products of the environment they worked in, or and have adopted habits from their past employer. It's your opportunity at the induction to change that by having a full induction and go through your policies, your procedures, your documentation, and then going through training, health and safety training, HR training, harassment training, talking about bullying and reporting. And then you get them to sign to say, I have read, I have had training, I understand everything you have told me. So this steps into that, trying your best and investing in preventative measures for sexual harassment and bullying. So I'm going to do another poll now because I want to have a little look at my notes and and also your questions as well. I have some really graphic they're awful. I can't share them with you. I've gone as graphic as I can on this webinar today with the drugging of a member of staff in the workplace at a works do. I think that's as far as I can go with that one. There are some really horrific ones I would like to share with you. I can't because I think it might affect people and shake them up and really really affect people. We know it happens, that's the main thing, and we have to stop it, and that's the main thing. What I'm going to do now is do a poll with you. Okay, do you know I'm going to actually, this is the one I'm going to ask you. Are you confident that your policies and procedures are effective against preventing sexual harassment in the workplace? This, by the way, if they're not, you end up in trouble, that you will be in the paper, I promise you. Very confident, not confident. Let's have a look at this. And I've done so many talks, in-person events, where people think it's funny. They go, they go, oh, I'd be bothered if I wasn't sexually harassed. And everybody laughs and chuckles. Um, and then, if they didn't find, I felt really left out because they didn't find me attractive. Get a grip. It's not nice to be sexually harassed. And then I've done a talk, actually, I've mentioned them before, a college in Wales that have a students' union. And they said, oh, we give the young lads a big cuddle. We think it's lovely. They give them a cush and we have a laugh. And everybody laughed when they were saying it. And I said, look, I'm going to put this in a different perspective for everybody here. I'm going to put three middle-aged men in a students' union, and I'm going to give them loads of young women, teenagers that are starting out on their own in life. And and what about those three men doing exactly what you're doing to those women, and see what happens then? It wouldn't be us all laughing about it. It would be how many minutes before the police arrived, and it would be a criminal, it would be assault. So we need to, all fair in love and war, we have to have equality here. And that means that for every sex that there is, that we have to have equality. We have to make it a fair workplace. We need to protect people that work for us and let them come into work protected in a safe place and enjoy working there. And that means we need to change the way we are. And so, I'm lucky because I've worked in employment law, HR, represented at tribunal, so I know what is expected. There are people that work in companies where there isn't a change. We need to make that change happen. So let's have a look at this poll, and I'm going to share it with you, actually, because it's interesting, this, because 45% said not confident. And if your managers are letting banter go on, then you need to stop it. I'm going to share this, okay? And then be quiet for a second while you have a look at those figures, because for me, that really hits home. 45% not confident. I'm going to hide that for you. Okay, so we know what your obligations are now. Let's have a look at the new powers for employees. So employees can complain directly to the EHRC. I hope we won't get there, because I hope you've got everything in place, that you have not taken reasonable steps to prevent sexual harassment. Enforcement action against employees includes issuing an unlawful act notice and requiring you to put an action plan in place to prevent further breaches, entering into a formal legally binding agreement with an employer to prevent future unlawful acts, asking the court for an injunction to restrain an employer from committing an unlawful act. I remember doing a talk, actually. It's all coming. They're all coming. Flashbacks are coming back, and I'm quite quick with my mouth, by the way. I remember somebody saying to me many years ago, I would never thought you were in the legal profession, because I had a bright pink, I love bright colours, a bright pink suit on. And I remembered going to a talk and actually putting my bags down one evening, terrible weather in the Yorkshire it was. I was travelling up there on the moors somewhere, a hotel, put my bag down to do a talk. And the accountant came up to me, it was an accountant, he said, "You're not the speaker, are you? I know this isn't sexual harassment, but this is discrimination." And he said, "I was expecting a man." I was like, what? And I never forgot that. And I just said to him, "Oh, I'll go then." And he goes, "No, my clients are here, stay." But I didn't expect a woman. And I thought, right, do you not think I've got a brain? So I've got my equipment. I was seething inside. I did my talk because there was lots of people there. At the end of it, he said, "I'm really, really sorry. I didn't think that, you'd be very good." I thought, I thought I'm actually very good at what I do, and I know that's not being big-headed, but when I'm talking and getting the point across in an in-person event, I know my stuff and I spend a lot of time in researching it. And then he said, "Oh, well," he said to me, "Oh, I never, I'm shocked." So I said to him, "Well, it's all right, because I'm never ever going to talk to you ever again." And I just pitied any staff that were female that worked for him. So anyway, as I'm speaking to you, and there's loads of people that have shared stories with me, I'm here for you. So employees can complain directly to the AH, issuing an unlawful act notice requiring you to put an action plan in place to prevent future breaches, entering into a formal legally binding agreement with an employer to prevent future unlawful acts, and asking for a court for an injunction to restrain an employer from committing an unlawful act. And just, for anybody out there that has experienced this, I just want to say I've had lots of comments over the years. I've had people say, you know, your hair's too blonde, or your hair's too long, or change the way you dress. I am not changing for anyone, and you take me as I am, and that's the way you should as well. The HRC is Britain's independent equality and human rights regulator. There are no particular criteria or minimum standards an employer must meet. Different employers may prevent sexual harassment in different ways, but no employer is exempt from the sexual harassment preventative duty. Issuing an unlawful act notice, and if you are subject to an investigation which confirms you have breached the act, you may be required to prepare an action plan setting out how you will remedy any continuing breach of the law and prevent future breaches. Entering into a formal legally binding agreement with an employer to prevent future unlawful acts, and asking the court for an injunction to restrain an employer from committing an unlawful act. These are the new powers for employees. So, new anticipatory duty for employers. So there's new proactive and preventative duty now to take reasonable steps to prevent sexual harassment in the workplace. Anticipatory duty: do not wait until an allegation is made. It only applies to the sexual harassment element of this. So, you know, there are no particular criteria or minimum standards an employer must meet. So we need to remind you of that. Different employers may prevent sexual harassment in different ways, but no employer is exempt from the sexual harassment preventative duty, regardless, you know, of your size. What the law considers reasonable measures from one employer may not be considered reasonable for another. It's up to a judge to consider what you could have done better to protect your employees. And we see this in tribunal. It's down to the judge at the time, and a lot of different things that we attend a tribunal with. So that's your new anticipatory duty for employers. Now let's have a look at the EHRC guidance, the 8 steps. This is really, really important. All of this is important. I just wish I had like hours to talk to you about it. I wish I was in a room with all of you and you could talk to me about how and what you've done and what you've gone through, and how, you know, and how you've managed that. But the EHRC guidance give the following 8 steps to illustrate the types of actions an employer can take to prevent and deal with sexual harassment in the workplace. The list is not being put out there as a compliance checklist. The government don't want to be prescriptive, but our view is that this must create the structure of your actions. So let's have a look at this. So the first step is you need to develop an effective anti-harassment policy, and that means including elements. And I know earlier on I had a question about this where somebody said their employer just wants to have a policy, that's it. This is a bit more than that, okay? And that's why I didn't answer your question earlier on. So develop an effective anti-harassment policy, including elements such as complaints procedure, who is protected and by whom, and the consequence of non-compliance. The step 2 is engage your staff, such as, you know, in regular one-to-ones and surveys to check their understanding. I've been speaking about the power of staff surveys for a long time, and the importance of asking your staff questions and personal questions and stuff about your business and how you engage. So, you know, having those surveys and checking their understanding. Now, step 3 is assess and take steps to reduce risk in your workplace. Now, this can be such as creating a risk assessment. That could be, for example, even lone workers, night workers, people that work in small teams or closely with people, and identifying customer-facing duties as well. That may be a high risk for harassment. And then, you know, and that's what happens when you do a risk assessment. We can help you with that, is that it reveals and it peels away things you may have not thought about. And step 4 is reporting, such as who do employees report to, what should employees do if they experience or witness it as well. So that's the reporting side of it. So it's not just reporting. We've got to think about who they report to, what should employees do, and if they experience or witness something like that. And I think we've all witnessed something we would consider harassment or sexual harassment. Step 5 is training. It's train your staff, it's refresher training, it's continually refreshing their knowledge. We've seen how harassment and sexual harassment and discrimination actually and bullying has evolved over the years, and how they are linked. that and how it has evolved and different ways of doing this now, and the way that you can manage it. So keeping your policies fresh as well and updated. And like I said, WhatsApp is another way of where there's group WhatsApps, people are stalking, people are talking about other people and changing photographs, putting photos on there they think's funny, and even sexually explicit ones as well. So train your staff and continually refresh the knowledge. Step 6 would, and by the way, things like conversations at work as well, and making sure, are you okay that we talk about this? But it doesn't have to be sexually explicit, but things that maybe, when you're in a conversation with your colleagues, check in what you're talking about. What to do when harassment complaint is made, such as act immediately and protect the complainant. Step 7 is dealing with the harassment by third parties, such as taking steps to prevent this type of harassment, assessing high-risk workplaces, and consider lone workers as well. And then step 8 is monitor and evaluate your actions as well. So keeping on top of that. So by all means, after this webinar, you get the recording, you get the slides, you get the notes as well. Check your junk box, but you do get it. If you don't, contact us, contact the CIPD HR Inform. We get a call after this anyway, and we'll make sure you get it. So what are your risk areas? The EHRC, an employer, what they say is an employer is unlikely to comply with a preventative duty unless a risk assessment is carried out. So when you carry out this risk assessment, you need to consider the risks of sexual harassment occurring in the course of employment for your staff. Especially third party, what identifying risks should you think about? Does your staff have customer, client, public facing duties? Are customers or staff drinking alcohol? Are staff expected to attend external events, conferences, or training? There's this human side of us. We are human. We are mammals. We are programmed to reproduce. We are programmed sexually. That we work closely with people at work. People can get infatuated. They can fall in love. They can have relationships at work, and this is why we need to update policies such as your relationship at work policy as well. But it is inevitable that it will happen. It's human nature, but we need to manage it and make sure that it's safe and it's comfortable. If people are entering into a relationship, if things happen and people do get together, it does. I met my husband at work many decades ago. I met him at work. I think if I asked you that question, you would say that you met him, met whoever, not him, met him at work. Oh, you didn't meet him, but you probably have met him. I don't know, but I'm on about you met your current partner at work. I don't know, but you met somebody at work or had a relationship or had an affair, or even just something's happened at work. It is going to happen because we are human. That is what's going to happen. It's how we make sure that we manage this. So, but people will show their emotion at external events, conferences, or training. Do staff socialise outside of work as well? And do staff engage in crude or disrespectful behaviour at work? Those are things to think about and consider. So consider the risk of sexual harassment occurring in the course of employment for your staff. Consider what steps you would take to prevent sexual harassment of workers by other workers and also by third parties too. Consider which of those steps it would be reasonable for you to take and implement those reasonable steps. So that's what are your risk areas. Now, the other side of this is deciding what is reasonable, and what it's like health and safety. I think you start off as you mean to go on. When considering what is reasonable, the factors that may be relevant include but are not limited to things like the size and resources of the employer. And I'm going to give you some scenarios shortly. The nature of the working environment, the sector the employer operates in, the risks present in that workplace, and nature of any contact with third parties. I could sit here now for hours and tell you stories from chip shops to pubs to retail to offices to driving long distance with somebody in a car, the conversations where people are offended or where it can go wrong for a company. Now, third party, so deciding what is reasonable, those are your 5 steps for that. Then third party harassment, your steps must include those taken to prevent third party harassment. Enforcement is a bit different. Employee is sexually harassed by a customer, they cannot make a claim to employment tribunal that you are liable for it. They can if it's a colleague harassing them. But even when no allegation is made, the employee can report you to the EHRC for failing to take reasonable steps to prevent harassment by a customer. So we've got clients, we've got customers, members of the public. This creates 2-tier enforcement. That's confusing. An employee can claim against you if a colleague sexually harasses them, but not if a third party does. But we still have rules to abide by. Okay, what I'm going to do now, let's have a look. HR documentation, I think at this point, because I'm going to go on to some examples in a moment, and HR documentation, I'd like to bring, because I've had so many questions here, and I have touched on a nerve today, and I have been explicit, because we have to be quite graphic when we talk about sexual harassment, because I'm not wishy-washy and, candy flossing about this. I'm going to be straight to the point and say people get harmed in work. People leave the job because of this. People get affected by it mentally, and they hold that guilt. And I want to really, for you to take this so seriously today and know that it happens to all genders and all sexes. And so at this point, because we are talking about the HR documentation, I'm going to bring George Reed in. Now, don't leave the webinar. I haven't finished yet. I've got to go through the documentation as well. I want to look at the questions, and I want to go through the last final slides with you, because I'm going to give you some examples. And I'm really, really sorry. I think you've got your whole screen up there, George. I really want to go through, and these questions anyway. So I'm handing over to George now.
Hi,
are you there? Hi,
yeah,
how are you? You all right?
I'm very well. Hello, everyone.
Like old friends, like, hi, you okay? Right, I'll leave you to it. I'm going to look at the questions while you're there, okay?
Happy Wednesday, everybody. So thanks for all joining today. So what I'm going to do is just take you through a little bit how we support a lot of our clients with sort of legislation updates and sort of different things that are going on out there. So the first thing, we have had a lot of questions, obviously, as Amanda just mentioned on the webinar. So if anyone that is a client of ours, do give us a call, because obviously we can answer a lot of these, especially the more detailed questions as well, where we need one of our experts to really sit down and understand the situation and get a little bit more of an understanding about what's happening, so we can give you that sort of answer. Also, any questions around the new employment laws and what's going on, we can also give that guidance there as well for you. Now, one thing that we're really sort of focusing on, especially with all the sort of changes at the moment that are happening in the movement in the employment law space, is giving you sort of proactive tracking methods for the laws. So what we've done is we've built a tracker that allows you to actually understand what is happening and when it's happening. So for instance, the new sexual harassment laws that will be coming into play through the forthcoming legislation will drop down in here. So this is all the stuff that's happening within the next 6 months for you. Now, if you click into one of those pieces of law, you can actually then go through and understand the summary, the links to the government acts, but also more importantly, the add to calendar function. So this is something that we've brought in to make sure that you can prioritize and you can drop pieces of law into that diary so it flashes up on the day that it goes live. So anyone that's pinned it will get that reminder. Now, in terms of support, what we do from a lot of our clients is to really help with support when it comes to research and documentation. So in terms of navigating through the platform and how you can find and help with that research, click into topics. Now, if we go into the harassment side of things, click into equality. And then what's going to happen is going to drop down. Now, harassment and bullying, when you go into that subsegment, what's going to happen is you're going to be getting 5 subtopics on that area. Now, the overview will be your quick facts and actually how it works. Your in-depth will be that practical guidance. And then if you click down and we drop down to the new laws, so in sexual harassment, so all of our content has been updated. We have the new sexual harassment policy live now as well, which I'll bring up for you in a moment. But it gives you that sort of support and that guidance about actually how and the interpretation of the new laws as well, which a lot of it comes down to, and the differences. And all of our guidance, as Amanda mentioned, is always up to date. It's the most important thing for us to make sure we're always giving you the correct stuff. Then, of course, we have all that supporting resource that goes with it, and that is your new sexual harassment policy. You're going to have training on bullying harassment. You're going to have checklist flow charts and stamp dates on the bottom so you know when it was all last reviewed for you. For instance, when you're looking at that policy, click in. All of our content opens straight out into Word for you to make it nice and easy. Just give
You
you
still,
a quick
yeah,
sneak view. Yeah, sorry, I
a
was having
lot
a
of the
technical issue.
yeah, no, you went. You sound like you were under a pillow or something. I just wanted to say that a lot of the questions are about the policy that was sent out during the week.
Of course.
Can you remind people that the policy we sent out? They're saying that a couple of pages were blurred.
Yeah.
There was a reason for it, wasn't there?
It's a preview version, and we also had
Excuse
some
me.
changes as well.
Excuse me.
So we've now gone live with the new policy, which I'm showing on the screen now.
Yeah.
And it gives you that starting point of guidance. You want to save and support the HR department with time, making sure they can sort of get these policies done in time for the changes, and give them that sort of good starting point from a guidance perspective.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And it goes into a lot of detail. And again, you can use it as a benchmark, a starting point, you can use the policy and tailor it to your language. But we're giving you that sort of head start when writing these sort of policies, all written by our HR experts as well, to give you that sort of up-to-date compliance as well.
Yeah. I've had
So,
go on, carry on. Sorry, on. Carry. Sorry,
no,
sorry,
yeah,
on. Carry on. No, carry on. I'm not with it today. I said, go on. Sorry.
you'll then also have all of the Q&As around that topic as well, and any cases as well. So it's really banding all that content together, whether it's research all the way through to documentation, which is obviously what we need to be getting in place, obviously, for the 26th as well, and giving that sort of support and guidance. We also have lots of different training resources, salary benchmarking tools, and lots of others. Now, what we will be doing is we will be sending a Calendly link out and doing a poll in a moment as well for you. So if anyone does want to have a look at obviously that platform in a little bit more detail, let us know, and you can book a sort of time into my diary, and I can take you through it and show you how we support a lot of other people.
That'd be brilliant. I know you're going to put a poll up now, aren't you? But I just wanted to say that Lindsay said that she completed research in UK live comedy and found 1 in 5 men experience sexual harassment. That's interesting, isn't it? And then also Louise is saying that she met her husband at work. He was her window cleaner. And somebody else said that they met their husband, because you spend a lot of time at work, don't you?
I met my partner at work.
Oh, did you, George?
Yeah,
did you?
I met my girlfriend at work.
Right.
So thanks, Amanda, for your time, and I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, the poll's open anyway. I've got somebody else saying the MD son approached me, pinned me up against the wall, and tried to kiss me. I was actually terrified. Somebody else said that I was 19, I was sexually harassed in my first job, and somebody else has said, naturally, you know what? I've got a story that actually is very similar to this, but somebody's saying, I'm not reading out names for a reason. So somebody is somebody very important, actually, that I you know, when I'm saying somebody, it's not disrespectful. You are somebody. And they said, I walked into a board meeting back in 2000 and something, was asked what colour knickers I had on. It was one of many horrible comments that were made on an ongoing basis. Really sick, just felt embarrassed. I was in my early 20s. And same thing for me years ago, sat training people, and it was all men, actually salesmen. And as a manager, I sat there in front of them talking about incentives and motivation, and they were all put in the chairs together. I said, what are you doing? It was this one man who'd bullied me a couple of weeks before, and he said, I've told everybody if I sit here and they sit next to me, we can see my skirt, see what knickers you've got on. Exactly the same thing. But my response is different, because I actually, you know, I was part of the management team and brought it to management at what had happened. And I won't go into great detail, but I literally said, you carry on with that behaviour, mate, and my 2 brothers will be up here with no set time at all. And they quickly shuffled out again. But, you know, you shouldn't have to put up with that. And somebody else saying that they were grabbed. They had, you know, a moment on the lips, a lifetime on the hips, all sorts of comments like that. So we're getting lots of stories here. At the end of it, I'm going to ask for these to be sent to me, actually. I can read. There's so many here that oh gosh, there's a horrific one that somebody's told me. I can't, you know, that I would like to read out, but we haven't got time today. But thank you. I haven't finished yet, but I'd like to thank anybody that's opened up to me today on the notes. I'm going to ask for a copy of those notes, and if you don't mind, you know, I'll reach out to you over time and just speak to you. But I think that we need to learn from this. So anyway, let's have a look. Let's have a look at my screen again. And let's have a look at the HR documentation. So what we're looking at here is what you need, okay? So you need to do that risk assessment. The policy is a vital part to the whole system. Let's remember that. So sexual harassment policy needs to include certain elements, specify as protected. We spoke about that. The training log, incident logs as well, action log to assign responsibilities to enable steps to be implemented too. These are all the things that we need to do. And templates of the above are all available on the CIPD HR Inform platform, so don't forget that. Specifies who's protected, state that sexual harassment will not be tolerated. But a lot of people say, I didn't know what sexual harassment was. I didn't know that was deemed as sexual harassment. That is where the training kicks in. We need to let people know what is not acceptable at work and what is unlawful, and state that the employer is required to take reasonable steps to prevent sexual harassment of their workers, etc. Scenario, let's have a look at this post October the 26th. Let's have a look at this scenario. An employer is a takeaway. They carry out a risk assessment and implement a variety of measures. This example is taken directly from the EHRC guidance so that you know what they are looking for. The employer failed to consider that the risk is its workers could be sexually harassed by customers attending the premises. So in this, they carry out a risk assessment and implement a variety of measures. Training with managers and staff on sexual harassment, timetable for refresher training, and strong sexual harassment policies. But the employer failed to consider risks from customers collecting their food, and therefore the employer is in breach and liable, and enforcement action could also follow. Despite an incident of such harassment occurring only 6 months ago, the employer has failed to consider if there are any reasonable steps it can take to prevent the sexual harassment of workers by third parties. It has therefore failed to comply with the preventative duty and the EHRC. So that's the first one. That's post October the 26th. Let's have a look at another scenario. An employer has a number of small cafes that and this will help lots of the consultants that listen, that are struggling due to reduced customer numbers, but they want to protect their staff from sexual harassment. They carry out a risk assessment and decide they need training with managers and staff on sexual harassment, timetable for refresher training, sexual harassment policy, and notices within the cafes stating there is zero tolerance of sexual harassment. Have they taken all reasonable steps? Yes, it's very likely they have. They've considered the risks and they put in place measures that are within their means to protect the staff from sexual harassment. They could consider bringing someone in to train their staff on sexual harassment, but whilst engaging an external provider to deliver training to staff on keeping themselves safe in public situations and how to safely intervene if they see sexual harassment happening would be good. It's not a requirement. And given the organisation is small and has limited resource, it is likely to have taken reasonable steps to prevent sexual harassment of its workers and therefore complied with the preventative duty. Funds would be better spent with a provider who can offer ongoing support, guidance and information on the duty to prevent sexual harassment, as well as the documentation they have identified. So that's the cafe scenario. And if let's carry on with the next slide. So tribunal claims will cost more. So the Employment Tribunal orders an employer to pay £30,000 compensation to a worker for loss of earnings and injury to feelings because of a successful sexual harassment claim. Now, employer has I don't know why I'm clicking past that. Sorry for a second. Employer has anti-harassment policies and procedures which are communicated to staff through regular training, but the employer has not reviewed the effectiveness of its policies or training in several years. The Employment Tribunal decides the employer has breached the preventative duty and orders a 10% compensation uplift, and the total compensation is £33,000. So whether or not an employer has taken reasonable steps is an objective test and will depend on the facts and circumstances of each situation. The amount of compensation uplift must reflect the extent to which the Employment Tribunal considers the employer has not complied with the preventative duty, and it must be no more than 25% of the amount of compensation awarded to the worker for the sexual harassment. So an employer should consider the risks of sexual harassment occurring in the course of employment, Consider what steps it could take to reduce those risks and prevent sexual harassment of the workers, and consider which of these steps it would be reasonable for it to take and implement those reasonable steps. And by the way, I know I will meet employers out there that will go, oh, it's this woke society. This isn't woke. This is going to work, enjoying your job and being protected. That's what it's all about. You need to invest in these policies. Labour's plan for future changes, the Labour government has pledged to require employers to create and maintain workplaces and working environments and conditions free from harassment, including by third parties. Strengthen the legal duty for employers to take all reasonable steps to stop sexual harassment before it actually starts, and expect further movement in this area. It's in its plan to make work pay, its employment law manifesto. Labour pledged to properly tackle sexual harassment at work and strengthen employers' legal duties. And that is their pledge. So Labour, our top tips for complying with a new duty: documentation is key. The banter or joke defence rarely offers any mitigation in court. Sexual harassment doesn't need to be directed at a particular person. If an employee feels intimidated, degraded, humiliated, or offended, they can claim. Sexual harassment, when it is unwanted behaviour of a sexual nature which makes someone feel intimidated, degraded, humiliated, or offended, even if unintended. Indirect conduct could still satisfy the legal definition so long as it is unwanted and is related to a protected characteristic. Effective documentation is essential in employment litigation. Without it, an employer is open to serious challenges. And vital docs that may protect you from allegations: harassment policy, trainer documentation, misconduct, discipline records, investigations and complaints, post-termination records, exit interviews, induction, training, social media, mobile phone policies, all that type of stuff is exactly what we're looking for as preventative documentation and policies and procedures. How can the CIPD HR Inform Pro help you? We've got comprehensive training sessions with handouts on discrimination and diversity, including harassment, downloadable and customizable template documents, including policies and letters, the latest news on legal developments, along with detailed analysis of what that means for you and your organisation, in-depth guidance on the law, and so much more, and template risk assessments, which you will be looking for in this particular area of law, action plan, complaints logs, and training records. Now, I'm just going to have a look. I think we have got one final poll, and I'm going to summarise. Do you know now what your new obligations are as an employer to prevent sexual harassment in the workplace? Let me launch that. Yes or no? So I'm having a look. I'm looking at all the, so ending a relationship, not reciprocating the advances, rejection can lead to bullying. These are some of my notes I've made to read out. Social media, stalking, phone calls, things. And I absolutely do not like the Kardashians. I don't know if you know, I don't know if you like them or not. I think they have a lot to answer for the changes and how people feel and self-esteem and filters and all that type of thing. Conversation for another day. Let's put that to one side. And we all love reality television, but the way that people speak to each other, it makes it more acceptable, and that rolls over into the workplace as well. We need to stop it. We need to put a stop to it. I'm going to summarize now. Okay, I'm going to close this poll. I'm going to summarize. I'd really like to thank you for listening to me today at the CIPD HR Inform. In summary, with the law and sexual harassment changing, you need to make sure you're ready for the new duty. This process can now begin by reviewing, updating what's already in place. A risk assessment of sexual harassment in the workplace should be carried out to identify what steps need to be taken. Now that Labour are in power, we could see further changes to the law on sexual harassment. We help everyone. And I'd like to thank you for listening to me today. If you want to follow me on LinkedIn and the CIPD HR Inform, please feel free to do that. My name is Amanda Chadwick. You can follow me also on Instagram as Chadwick Amanda or Amanda Chadwick Speaker. We are the CIPD HR Inform. My name's Amanda Chadwick. This has been very, very passionate for me. I haven't told you half of what I know, and we only have 1 hour to do that in. We are the CIPD, I keep saying that, CIPD HR Inform. you can contact us on www.hr-inform.co.uk if any of you would like a demonstration of our pro platform. If any of you would like to share a story, contact me on the LinkedIn. If any of you want a demo, which I feel that a lot of people will be reaching out now, because we can give you the right documents, policies and procedures to help you and show you how to do that risk assessment and give you the information for that. Thank you, everybody. 0333 207 5658. Thank you very much for listening to me today. I hope you have the most wonderful week. And it's now to say stop. We don't need this anymore. We want to come into work and enjoy the place. This is what is happening, and we can help that too. Thank you very, very much indeed, everybody. And thank you for the lovely comments that people are putting in the post now. I'll see you again. Don't forget the Menopause Awareness Month. This month is Menopause Awareness. And we are doing an event. I can't remember the date, it's the 14th, but remember, Menopause Awareness Day is Friday. Walk proudly in your shoes today with that little extra air in your soles. Be very, very confident at work and put a stop to it, and turn around and say to somebody and say, no, that is not acceptable. I'm giving you Amanda's confidence. That's what you're going to do. See you soon. CIPDHR Inform. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. It's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from everybody here. And Stacey Cheadle, who actually writes the content. Thank you very, very much indeed. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.